This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we'll be talking to amazing author Daniel Hurst about his new release, The Perfect Nurse. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you today, but I'm going to contain for a minute so that you can give us an overview for those who don't really know about the story yet, a quick glimpse into what The Perfect Nurse is about.
Yeah, sure. So The Perfect Nurse is about a nurse called Darcy, and she's one of those kind of nurses who goes into people's homes. So it's not set in a hospital, it's actually in a domestic setting. And she goes into patients' homes and offers care for the patient in their own setting. So she goes to visit a couple, and upon getting there, she starts to kind of feel uneasy, as if something's not as it should be. So we're obviously trying to kind of figure out, is the couple hiding something, or maybe can we trust the nurse? Is she hiding something? And it just kind of takes off from there.
And there's a lot of suspicion, as you just painted it. There's suspicion around everyone. And the setting that you give us, that intro setting, she's going into their home, which is always kind of an intimate, not that it's a transgression, you can be welcomed in, especially if you're a caregiver, but there is a level of intimacy to that, and it's forced intimacy, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that home and just kind of set the stage for that setting of the home?
Yeah, so it's a very impressive home. So as soon as she gets there, she's impressed by the house, but she also gets this strange sense of deja vu. And she feels like she's never been there before, but she's uneasy straight away. And, you know, the couple seem nice, but then she starts to kind of pick up on everything's not as it seems. And yeah, the whole kind of concept of going into the house, obviously with it being medical theme, the obvious choice would be setting it in a hospital. But in the genre of psych thrillers, we kind of like the domestic setting best. So it's quite good to find a way to take the kind of the medical theme and take it to the home.
So it really begged the question for me as I was reading it. Are you a Hitchcock fan at all, or did Hitchcock play into any of this? Because for those who have read the source novel for it or seen Hitchcock's version, Rebecca, I was so reminded of Rebecca, of this woman going in to this massive home where these characters who are kind of a little bit unexpected in certain ways are living, and then just even moments from Suspicion and some of his other famous movies. Were you a Hitchcock fan at all, or did any of that influence you?
Yes, I've not seen Rebecca. I've seen all the obvious, the famous ones like The Birds and those kind of things. But when I was a kid, I think my mum bought me like the box set of like 3 or 4 of his biggest kind of hits. So I watched those ones, but I've not seen the entire collection. I should do. I'm sure I would enjoy it.
I'm sure he would enjoy your work as well, because it is amazingly suspenseful. What are the types of things for you that resonate when we talk about, the elements of psychological thrillers? Because again, you did the suspense so well. I mean, the little hairs on the back of my neck were up the whole time, and I just kept waiting, trying to see what's around the next corner.
Yeah, I think for me, the best way to describe the genre is unusual things happening to ordinary people. So it's taking those kind of almost mundane, everyday things, and then bit by bit, you start to kind of make out that this isn't normal, this is unusual. And then it's just kind of, I guess it's up to each writer of each book, how far you take that and which kind of tangents you go off on. And for me, I kind of just, once I'm in that story, it might go darker, or it might just get crazier, or I build the suspense more, or throw in a twist where you don't expect a twist. Yeah, it's such a fun genre to write in because you can get inspiration from everyday situations.
And that element of the unreliable narrator, you're always wondering with a psychological thriller, especially one such as yours, written first person, uh, can I trust this person? Should I trust this person? And one of the things, I'm hoping this isn't a spoiler because we find this out in the kind of the opening scene of the book. Darcy is struggling with some sleep problems, which we all know what lack of sleep can do to us. And so that makes you start to question whether she's an unreliable narrator. What made you start us off with that concept of, this is someone who may not be sleeping properly. And then, kind of how did you craft it from that point on?
Yeah, I mean, the whole issue with sleep might have just simply been because I've got a 1-year-old daughter at home and I'm not getting much sleep at the moment. So maybe that was on my mind when I first opened the book. But yeah, I think it's, as you say, if you kind of throw in the element of a person's not slept well, then the thoughts aren't going to be as you would expect. They're going to kind of think differently. I mean, I guess our personality changes if it's been a bad night's sleep. And if that's been something that's gone on for weeks, we're almost kind of altering the person that we are. We're reacting differently to how we would. So as soon as I added that element, it kind of gave me the freedom to kind of take her off in some kind of areas. And then I guess the reader's thinking, is this just because she's not been sleeping, or is this her real personality? And then why is she not sleeping? What's happened in the past? And it just kind of adds so many questions. And then you can use the kind of first half of the book to just explore those questions.
Part of those questions, like I said, there's a bevy of questions that you get us to ask. We're not really sure of anything. And again, that sleep deprivation for Darcy impacting what she's seeing and even what she's feeling potentially. The other characters around her, there's a variety of different, I would say, veiled motivations. We think we know everyone's motivations, but we're not quite sure. Motives seem to be a big theme playing over and over again. What's everyone's motive, including Darcy's? What was it about motive that really drew you in? And how did you do that so well? How did you hide everybody's motives and play with them as well as you did?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to hide the motive of the main character when you're inside their head, because you're always giving away their thoughts or whatever they want. I guess the reader knows what they want. But obviously, there's so much fun to be had with, competing motives, and, one person wants one thing, somebody else wants the other. And in this particular story, when she meets the couple, I guess the obvious motive is the husband wants his wife to get better. So he's hired these nurses to come in and help. And also the nurses are there to try and do their best and help. So it seems like quite a simple setup. But then as, Darcy starts to question things, and it's like, is her motive helping this patient, or is it trying to get out of this situation before anything else gets weirder? Or has she got her own personal agendas? And then does the husband actually want his wife to get better or not? And has he got these nurses here for another reason? It all starts to kind of, there's so many questions again that come up.
There are, and those little, it was almost like there were these little insidious shadows playing in the corners of this beautiful grand home and the land that it's on. And I just constantly felt like, even if you said the sun was shining outside, I felt those shadows creeping in because I didn't know what was coming from where, but there was something. And I wasn't sure how to put my finger on it. Women in this book, women play a pivotal role in it. Not only is the lead character female, but a lot of the characters are females. And it's interesting because Darcy is single. She's going to this house. It's the home of a married woman. Her coworker is married as well. There's a difference almost in how she's interacting with each of these married women who have children and have this interconnectedness in family in ways that she doesn't. She lives alone. She doesn't really have any friends. You isolated her, and that was kind of mean, but I'm guessing there was a reason for that in terms of putting the screws to her mentally. Was that intentional to isolate her in that way, to put the screws to her?
Yeah, it's definitely intentional because, again, it conjures up the question of, is she on her own because she wants to be? Did something bad happen in the past? Why is it not kind of worked out with a guy, with kids, marriage? And then you get that contrast of the couple that are settled in their home, and then she's someone that, obviously, when we meet her, she seems to kind of unsure about where she is in life, what she wants. So you've got that contrast of people who've got it figured out and she hasn't got it figured out. So yeah, that was definitely intentional to kind of make her seem like she's missing something and she's trying to find it.
And it was interesting too, because at certain points, the way that she's interacting with these other characters, you can see where maybe she doesn't want that life and she's happy with her home and getting to go home to her home. But then there's other times where she kind of likes to go to her job and have a place to go and people to interact with, because it's not just a family unit. She really doesn't have any friends or support at all.
Yeah, so I guess obviously being a nurse, she's a caregiver. She likes to spend her time with others. So there's that element of she's kind of transferring that care side into a job because she hasn't got anyone else when she goes home. But then we're kind of unsure, does she enjoy that as much as, initially in the early stage of the book, she's questioning, should she be a nurse anymore? And we're kind of trying to figure out, is that just because it's a tough job? Maybe she wants a career change, or did something happen in her career in the past? And yeah, it's quite hard to tell at first whether she wants the quiet home life, or she wants to go and keep doing a job, and she's unsure if she's good enough to do a job anymore.
And one of the other things I just want to throw out, sometimes people paint a character, and there's many ways to do that. You can tell the reader about the character through the way that other people interact with them, which you did. But you can also do it through setting. And I loved the opening sequence where she's in her home and she's getting ready to go to work. And because of her home, you tell us so much about her and who she is with the smallest little details. Is that really hard? I mean, do you sketch these scenes? Do you create them physically so that you can see them? Or is it just you're there at your laptop and what comes out comes out?
Yes, I've got, I'll do a structure, like a chapter outline. But yeah, that particular scene, I guess most authors do this, when you visualize the scene, it's in your head, it's kind of a movie, and you're kind of, so if the character's walking around the house getting ready, I'm almost in that position walking around the house. So yeah, I think a couple of things you're referring to, like there's a certificate on the wall, and there's kind of certain kind of props around the house that she sees and picks up. Yeah, I guess it's kind of me imagining, it's almost like a movie scene, and it's the opening, so you want to set the character, but you don't just want people talking, you want to give them a few, kind of static images. It's not just, we learn about people from appearances, not just what they say. So I guess it was my way of doing that before any other characters were introduced.
That whole question you raised before, what are the motives of the people in the house? And again, we're questioning her motives, we're questioning everyone's motives. How much of trust do you think has to go into a patient-client relationship, especially when they are coming into your home? How much of that foundational trust speaks to who we are as people when we are in a state where we need care, and there's strangers coming in?
Yeah, I guess it's huge. I guess if if I've got a wife and daughter, if there's some reason for I had to get a medical expert to come, especially came to the house, whatever he said, I guess I would kind of put my trust in him or her, and it would take a while before you started to question, are they doing the right thing? Have they got the right motives? You would just assume that, if they're in this particular job, they must want to help people. So yeah, I guess it's such a big thing of, and when you add the home element, it's more personal because they're coming to you, you're not going to them. And I actually got the idea for this because when I was speaking to my publisher and we were talking about going with a medical theme of nurses, I initially didn't want to do the hospital because I thought I don't know too much. I don't want to do too much research into the medical side, and if it's in a hospital, there's going to be so much like apparatus that I need to know about. And the area I am, there's quite a few. I've seen quite a few nurses going into homes over the past few years, And that's why I thought, actually, I could use the domestic setting of a nurse going in. And then, as I walk by and I see the nurses going in, you kind of, the door shuts and obviously I don't see what happens after that. But then I guess my imagination kicked in. I was like, well, what's the first conversation you have? How does it work? Are they downstairs? Are they upstairs? Does the nurse make a cup of tea? Does she just get straight to work? Do they chat for a while? It just kind of conjured up so many kind of questions. So then when my publisher said, shall we do something with a nurse? I was like, yes, I've got an idea ready to go.
That's fantastic. It's always those, wait a minute, what's that person doing? And what does that mean? Right? Those little moments that you have as a writer that just lead to bigger thoughts and bigger plots, as it were. That sense of in the home versus the hospital, what I thought was great about that too is, it'd be one thing if this story was being told from the person needing care being in their home. But when it's the caregiver going into someone else's home, the hospital really is their setting. That's where they're in command and they're in control. They're comfortable with everything. And most of us who go into a hospital are not very comfortable because it's not our place and we don't understand half the instruments or announcements that are being made or anything else. That whole sense of immediately putting her in someone else's court where someone else has the advantage really was, again, so incredible for creating this whole masterful puzzle that you set forth in this book. That whole sense, have you ever been in a situation where people have come into your home or you've gone into someone else's home and just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm such a fish out of water here?
I guess you always have that, even if you're going to visit friends, because you want to be polite and you're like, do I take my shoes off? Do I not take my shoes? You start kind of questioning simple behaviors, whereas when you walk into your own house or somewhere you're familiar, you just do what you've always done. And it's a good point you raise about it kind of puts the nurse kind of on the back foot, even though she's the expert, she should know what she's doing. She's almost at the kind of the whim of the couple because she's like, okay, how are we doing this? How do you want it to work? And the husband kind of directs her around the house as opposed to coming to hospital and she will just take over. So I think that's a good way of putting it. It's kind of, and the reader, obviously, I want them to sympathise with the main character, so I want them to be on Darcy's side. So if she's feeling a bit uneasy when she walks in, the reader's kind of more on her side, and that sense of unease begins from the first few chapters.
You are so good at this, and you've been at it a while. This isn't your first book. Where did your passion for suspense and these kinds of thrillers, the psychological element, where do you think that was born inside of you?
That's a good question. Ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a writer. So my parents have got kind of boxes of different stories that I wrote when I was a kid. So going back to 6, 7, 8 years old, I've got memories of kind of sitting on the carpet and writing stories and then just handing them to my mum and dad. And there would be, at that point, they were all kind of, it might just be something I'd seen on TV and then I'd put my own kind of spin on it. And then as I got older, all the kind of ideas and stories I had started to become more, I was never kind of a fantasy or a sci-fi guy. It was more just everyday things. So I'd be going to work, I'd be coming home, and I'd get ideas from just those kind of ordinary situations. Being in the car, going to work, walking down the street, being in the park. And then when I decided to, really kind of pursue my writing, I knew that, if I go with those kind of ideas, I don't have to spend months researching a subject that I don't know anything about because this is just everyday life. So it made it kind of sped up that process. But in terms of ideas, I guess I've been using my imagination now since over 30 years. So once I kind of get going with things, it's quite fast.
Well, I am very glad that you got going with things. It is an absolute page turner. And I also understand it is not a standalone novel, is it?
No, it's actually now a 3-book series. So we've got, obviously, The Perfect Nurse is book 1. And then got to remember, I get mixed up now with the titles. I think The Nurse's Lie and then The Nurse's Mistake is the 3rd book.
And it's going to be all Darcy in all 3?
Yeah, Darcy's in all 3. Yeah.
outstanding. I do not want to spoil it for anyone, but we will be so happy to get more Darcy. I cannot wait for the next one to come out. I am just, the way that you ended it, you put a bow on this story really, really well, but then you open the door for us to say, okay, now what? And it's as perfect as Darcy wants to be as a nurse is as perfect as you wrote this story. Daniel, for folks who have never read your work before and who are going to absolutely love it, and want to find out all about you, for your existing fans who want to get in touch with you, where is the best place for them to reach you?
The best place would be, I've got a website, danielhurstbooks.com. If you can find all my books on Amazon, if you just type in Daniel Hurst. And I'm on social media. I've got a Facebook page and an Instagram page, Daniel Hurst Books. It's got my email address all over. So I always see my emails if anyone wants to get in touch after reading a book. But yeah, I guess any of those avenues, you'll find me.
Wonderful. And everyone is wanting to find the perfect nurse. Anyone who loves psychological thrillers will find every element beautifully written, wonderful, strong characters, a plot that is an absolute page turner. And best of all, after you close it, you think. So, Daniel, thank you so much again for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for all the kind compliments, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.